Good evening. When Charisma was passed out, my guest tonight must have been there with a shopping cart. When New Faces of 1952 opened on Broadway, one of its most exciting discoveries was the woman who is my guest tonight. That's Leonard Sillman's New Faces, by the way. And her name is Eartha Kitt. Right now, Miss Kitt is a new face on Broadway all over again. When this show is broadcast, she will just have opened in the musical Timbuktu, which is a remake of Kismet set in Black Africa. And Timbuktu brings her back to the stage for the first time in, well, more than a decade. And in fact, she has been absent from these shores a good bit during the past decade, but I'm delighted that she's here tonight to show us what we've been missing. Will you welcome, please, the inimitable Eartha Kitt. Well, they're certainly glad to have one of us back. I'm not sure. Please don't go away so long next time or whatever.
I'll do my best.
Eartha, I would like to get from you your version, once and for all, of something that happened to you some years back. But before I get to that, if there was ever a cliche that was true about anybody, there's one that's true about you. And it's rags to riches. Literally, from the dirt farm in South Carolina to what they used to call the smart supper clubs of the world. You don't hear that phrase much anymore. But the shimmering, sexy, glamorous, rich, envied, marvelous woman who sits beside me now.
Ow.
Oh, I didn't mean you, the one over there.
I was wondering whom you were referring to.
But could you possibly ever have had a presentiment back there in South Carolina? Someday I'll show them all, I'll be there and headlining in the Persian Room.
Well,
No.
not really that way. Of course, I know what you're referring to, but I didn't know anything about the outside world in the cotton fields of South Carolina, so you have nothing to compare anything to.
That was the world.
That
if
was
someone
the
had showed you a
world.
picture of a glamorous woman in a red evening gown in front of a microphone, you would not have known whether that was from this planet or something else, probably.
Actually, the people whom we were working for on the plantation, we only saw them also as working people.
Mm-hmm.
We never saw them in a glamorous way. All we saw was the great big white house sitting in, on top of the hill. And those are the people whom we were working for. And when we saw them, they would come and pick up the cotton, in the big sheets. But that's the only type of life we ever saw. I didn't know anything about electricity or inside sanitation, which still scares the devil out of me, or gas stoves, movies, never heard of it, a radio I'd never heard of. As a matter of fact, when my aunt, my mother's sister, sent for me to come here to New York to live with her after my mother died, and she took me away from the South because I was being very badly treated by the people down there, because they said, well, we don't want that yellow gal in our house,
Yellow gal. Now, just to stop you for a moment, what's so insulting about that phrase?
Well, it means you don't belong to anybody, actually. You are not white and you're not black, and also being an illegitimate child.
Yeah.
You're an ugly duckling. Nobody wants you.
Your father was white and your mother was black.
My mother was part black and Cherokee Indian.
Yeah.
So you're.
But it was your father who was
mixture.
white.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'm told.
Yeah.
I never saw my father.
Yeah.
And when my aunt sent for me out of that world and brought me up here to New York, and they turned on the electric light on the wall, I think I stood and played with it. I thought it was magic. As a matter of fact, I still think lights are magical. But as a child who never saw any type of world like that, it was very, very amazing for me. And then they turned the radio on, and voices came out of this box, and it scared the devil out of me. And when I asked what is happening, my aunt said, well, there are little tiny people inside. And when you press the button, the people will talk, or you press another button, and they don't know to play music.
Are you telling me there aren't little tiny people inside?
Yes, you.
Isn't that what we are now? I never expected to grow up to be one of those little tiny people, did you?
But all of that was very, very, very interesting. It's fascinating for a child to be brought out of a world that has nothing to compare to. We didn't have any books. I went to school, I think, 2 or 3 days when we were down there. So we had no magazines and no movies, nothing to compare the rest of the world to.
Do you ever get a kick of the kind that I talked to the singer Charlie Pride about on the show once, of being able to go back and stand on that very land and say, I could buy this now if I wanted to? Have you ever had any desire to get that kind of emotional
No,
revenge?
I want to stay as far away from the cotton fields as possible.
In case they reopen them.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have a little estate in Beverly Hills, and I always threaten every agent I've ever come in contact with that I'm planting cotton and I'm hiring them to pick it.
You have a little white jockey out front? Who, you know, the Iron Man.
Yeah, I've threatened to do that many times, but
think you-
I haven't done it yet.
Has anyone ever explained why, if 3 out of 4 of your grandparents were white, you're black? But if 3 out of 4 of your grandparents were black, you're also black? You know
No,
what I mean?
well, there are all sorts of reasons for that, and we won't go into that because
Well-
we're all sensitive to that kind of thing. But the point to me is that if you are, particularly of all of these bloods, you belong to everybody, and that's the way I've always felt about myself. And when they say you don't belong to us and you don't belong to us, and there weren't enough Cherokee Indians left to get in contact with, then I felt that since I was so rejected by everybody that I had to find my own way to be related to somebody. So I've accepted everybody, and I hope that everybody has accepted me. I don't give a damn about what race calls me their own.
Yeah. What if a man... Certainly not yours. They say there has to always be somebody you can be prejudiced against, or the world will come apart, you know, and it seems, the finger seems to move from race to race over the years, but maybe not fast enough.
One of the fascinatingly interesting things to me is Alex Haley, who went back and looked, you know, the Roots route and all of that sort of thing. We found that, and the last thing that he did on a Sunday afternoon, I think it was after Roots. This was rather recently, it was on television. And in that church, in the area in which those people were brought there as slaves, everyone, the cotton plantation owners and Alex Haley's family are all now so mixed up that nobody knows who belongs to whom, and everybody belongs to everybody, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. The whites and the blacks are all mixed up now.
And there's no way in this world you will ever know who your ancestors were specifically on one side. Suppose a man came to the door of somewhere you're working and could prove that he was your father, and someone said, there's a man outside who is your father. Do you want to say hello to him?
Well, I'd say hello to him. Anybody can be my father.
Well, but if you thought he really were, would you tell him a thing or two about how he might have managed to show up a little sooner?
No, I don't think so, because I think that I've done all right.
Yeah.
I don't want to make anybody feel that they were guilty and not doing what was intended to do or should have been done by legal isms and all of that. No, God has taken care of me very well, and I'm very happy for that.